Welcome back, dear friends. A change. My face is actually on the screen. The reason being that I heard from a couple of people previously who said it'd be really nice to see the face rather than just the hands. So, okay, let's give it a go. Also, about 2 months ago, I was contacted an email from a TV production crew, and they said, we noticed that you've got a website with steampunk machines. Would you be interested in being interviewed about them on telly? And every fibre in my being, every part of me was screaming, no, just go back to your lovely safe dark workshop and avoid everyone. But stupidly, rightly or wrongly, I think it's a good idea sometimes to leave your comfort zone. So I said, oh yes, yeah, that sounds interesting. So a Zoom call was organised where one of the producers spoke to me for half an hour and wanted me to talk about all the machines and walk them around my house. That was interesting, and I thought, well, that'll be the last I'll hear of it. No one's going to want to come and interview me or anything. I can talk about machines, but I really don't like talking about myself. But then, you've guessed it, about a week later I had a phone call saying, would it be okay to come to your house and interview you next Thursday? Dear oh dear, yes, that would be fine. So Thursday arrived. They arrived about 3 o'clock, so I had most of the day to whip myself into a complete and utter fever of fear, worry, loathsomeness and all the rest of it. But, you know, they came, they're very nice people, huge camera, microphones, lights, this, that and the other. And I thought, well, at least I can now talk about the machines. I'll talk about them all and explain how they work. No. First thing, spend an hour sitting in the lounge with a huge lens pointing at my face while 3 producers prompted me into answering all sorts of questions about how I feel, my emotions, for heavens to Betsy's sake. Emotions, how I feel about steampunk, how my family feel about me feeling about steampunk. Oh dear. So now I'm convincing myself, I'm sure, I mean, once they look at the footage, it's going to be absolutely dreadful. We did then go around later on and video the machines, and I talked about them. But I'm now sure, convincing myself that they will take one look at the footage and say, no, need to find someone else. Fingers crossed. But, hence the fact, when I was on holiday recently, I was thinking, why not just appear on YouTube? Who cares? Who really cares at all? So here we go. At least this time I'm going to give an introduction, as someone suggested in the past, possibly at the beginning and an ending bit, whatever that's called. Plenary, I seem to remember from teaching. And then witter on with my hands throughout the middle bit. Now, I went on holiday recently, let's get down to business. And as always, I need a project to think about. I can't just go and relax. I need something to keep the old gears working, the grey matter. And it's something I wanted to do for a long time, which is to design a steampunk machine that plays music. Fabulous. Something always fascinated me. Now, if you've watched this channel in the past, you'll know that so far on my machines I have used, well, the barometric prognosticator 3 was the first musical one. That has got a bell that rings to tell you, signal the hour changes, and when it's displaying readings, what reading it's actually displaying. It's also got the flute, that's right, the first flute, which was off a cuckoo clock. It uses the bellows from a cuckoo clock to make the wind, because obviously no cheating, Steamhead, no cheating. If you can have a sound, it has to be made for real. And then it's got a Scotch yoke that pulls the sort of swanny whistle style mechanism in and out to set the pitch. And that works really nicely as it plays the weather forecast back to you audibly, musically, each hour or when required. You can actually hear how the, for example, humidity or the pressure or temperature has risen, fallen, whatever, throughout the last 24 hours. So, two instruments, bell and whistle. And of course, who can forget, as I did this morning whilst walking the dog in the park, saying, I'm sure there's something else. And there is. There is the trumpet from the Net Throbwell and the heraldic clarion door horn. which is fantastic. As those of you who've watched before will know, it's a sprayed up vuvuzela from a brilliant company in Spain. And I've just forgotten, I just remembered again. Of course, there's the Climatic Revelator that displays the weather forecast by ringing chimes, a circular row of chimes, circular ring of chimes with a hammer. And that's another really good potential musical or source of music. And of course, I've just remembered, nothing like having a script, and this is nothing like having a script, Victoria the automaton. The other thing, the other element in the music machine could be a singing automaton. There's no reason why Victoria couldn't sing, because having figured out the Teensy soundboard, which was amazing, and live filtering to make input sound have wow and flutter and crackles and other things, there is no reason why she can't sing, and that would be a lovely addition to any steampunk music machine. So let's start this, and I'll stop filming myself. I'll just show you some of the sketches I did on holiday, just some of the ideas that came to mind. Thank you. So here's the first idea, thinking about keyboards and notes, and there we are, look, there's some sort of representation of the one on the barometric prognosticator with the flute and the bellows and springs and motors, and then getting inevitably more complicated, thinking possibly about having a row of them, rather like an organ, a church organ, with solenoids under each one, a valve, so that you can play lots of them together, which makes quite a lot of sense. And I was thinking, well, rather than having that Scotch yoke, you could have a plunger inside with a rack and pinion. Sounds like a good idea. Something along the lines of that. Now, the great thing about that was, or is, if you had several of them, you could then be setting up the pitch on one while another one was playing, you know. And I was thinking, well, the other thing about bellows and flutes, and here's one I didn't prepare at all. So there we are, beautiful little bellows. And the flute, and the flutes, no, yeah, they are all the same as far as I can see, because I bought lots of them. The difference is in this wooden block, which has got a hole drilled up the middle, which sets the pitch. But I have noticed on the lower notes, on really big cuckoo clocks, these bellows are actually much larger because they need more air to make the notes. So the thing is, if I had it like that, then I'm going to have adjustable bellows. And I thought, well, I can make bellows by having another motor driving down a plunger, a bit like a piston or something. There's the idea for that. So you have a motor at the top, a motor at the bottom. The stepper motors I usually use, hold on a minute, these ones, which I've used in all the machines because they're brilliant. 5 volts. They come with an interface board that you just plug that into, so you can connect it directly to something like an Arduino. The Arduino has a library that you can use to control them, and they're geared down a lot inside. So they're not fast, which I'll come on to shortly, but they've got a lot of torque, very powerful, and very, very accurate. I think it's something like 2,000 or more steps per whole rotation. So very accurate. So they'd be very good. And I always forget to read the number of these because people regularly ask. It is a 28BYJ48. There you go. Recommend them. They're slow though. So I was thinking, well, how slow? And when I got home, I looked it up because I hadn't got any internet access for that matter. And they go maximum, I think it's about 4 seconds per revolution, which is about 14 RPM. Very slow. So I don't know whether that would work. Oh, and there's, you know, I mentioned the chimes on the Revelator. The idea of having 2 hammers on motors, one inside, one outside, that can both turn independently, so they can be setting up the next notes while the last one's playing. Hey, thank you all. Right, next, I'll race through these. Another idea, what was this? Oh, the accordion. I remembered I'd bought bits of an accordion, and I was thinking, how could you get a keyboard to be played without dozens of electromagnets? And I thought of an even more complicated way. You could have a cylinder with lots of little motors in that would throw out a pin, a bit like the works in these lovely little music boxes. We have a cylinder with these pins, and as it rotates, just need some oil, it plays, plucks, one of these little tuned things, whatever they're called. It's a bit like that. Stop it. But with little motors, they flip out a pin. Well, they'd flip out the pin there because there'd be two lots of them, one 180 degrees from each other. And then they'd roll round, and that would engage them with the keyboard. And during the meanwhile, the other one would flip out or flip in, and you'd have a whole row of these, if you get my drift. And the nice thing about it is that these little things, the pins, can be on very, very small motors, because there's no effort needed in that, because the force to actually push the keys is coming from when the whole cylinder turns backwards and forwards. But when I got home and dug out the accordion that I'd got, excuse me a minute, what did I discover? But yes, keys, mechanical valves. But the so-and-so who sold it to me on eBay obviously wanted to make as much money as possible, so he or she took out the reed boxes and sold them separately. So there goes that idea. Great shame. I'd still like to do something like that, but it's annoying. Now, this is where I became completely preoccupied with one of these. That's nicely in tune. A ukulele, because I remember my kids had got them, and I thought, that's really nice. All you need to do, is to have some way of holding the strings down and the different fret positions, and some way of plucking the strings. What could be simpler? Well, 3 or 4 weeks later I can come up with quite a long list of what could be simpler. But I started off thinking about having rows of bearings, eccentric ones that could then come down onto the strings, like that for instance, and then you could have them all arranged nicely with the interfaces with the little motors under there. But of course those motors go slowly. Possible, those, possible. So then I thought, well, how about having individual little things or groups, clusters of things, with a big motor at the top, well, a stepper motor, one of these, on each one, and then have some sort of thing inside that can lift up and down to hold the string against a sort of built-in fret. That could potentially work. This is the problem with design. It's a curse and it's a joy, because the curse is there are so many ways of achieving something. There's not just one way. There inevitably will be the best way that someone can think of doing it at the time. But, oh dear, but then the joy is that you can sit on a beach listening to the sea and the waves and everything, and just imagining in your head a multitude of different ways of achieving the same thing. So, trying to work out how to fix a load of these motors, enough for each of those frets, that really ruled that out. It's another nice idea for how you could achieve something else, which I can't even remember. Oh, and then, yeah, if the strings were wire, and you can, because I looked it up, get wire strings for a ukulele. I can't spell ukulele. I spelt it differently on each sheet, just to hope that I'd finally get to the right spelling. But you could have the frets made of some resistive metal, or even have little gold-plated loops under each one, and then the strings, if they were metal, you could tell when each string was actually touching the right fret. Oh, it just drove me to distraction. And then other ways, Bowden cables like you have on bike brakes. There's no end to it. More ideas. And then this is the final one. That's it. The last idea I came up with was having 4 of the titchy little motors, a bit like that idea with the accordion, that could spin round little pieces of plastic that could be 3D printed, and they could then push down, engage, if you will, a bit like that. If they're lined up that way, they'd push down into the slot. If they're 90 degrees, they'd then push this whole thing down, and they'd have little row of springs. And then the whole of this thing, assembly, could be pulled up and down with one of the small motors. So, the benefit of hindsight, something very much like that. I finally summoned the enthusiasm to actually start making this. Now you can see what I mean. I found these incredibly small motors, and I assure you my hands haven't grown enormously. They are, what do they call it? Cordless motors, I seem to remember. I didn't even know they existed. But you have a permanent magnet in the centre, and you have an epoxy held together coil, complicated coil around the outside. That's why it's to help them be used on drones and things, because there's so little momentum needed, or inertia, or weight, mass, or whatever, in the bit that spins round, that they can go incredibly fast. Now, I don't want them to go fast, I just want them to turn. But, you know, the idea is they can flip something backwards and forwards really quickly. So there are 4 of those fixed into here that can flip these little bits like that, or like that. And because of the design of the top of these parts, I don't know, I haven't come up with any stupid names for them yet, these are captive, so you just flip that as far round, say clockwise as possible. It can't go any further. It means that when you lower this, it doesn't engage. See what I mean? Decides it wants to engage. But if you flip it through 90 degrees, it's going to push that down. So you have a row of these above the strings, above every fret position on the ukulele, and you have a load of H-bridge drives, one for each of these motors, so they can go both ways, and then you have 4 outputs to drive one of these that's going to go there, and then my brain is a muscle, because that is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Yes, it could work. Yes, it ticks the overcomplicated way of achieving things with steampunk. But, don't know. Tell me what you think. I'd love to know. Should I pursue this idea? Because this morning I came up with yet another idea. Forgive the high quality rendition, but this is the realisation. There's the side of the ukulele. That's this bit with the frets up there and the strings. And you could have a roller, possibly with a rubber shield on the outside, a rubber tyre, and that can roll up and down these. Because it's rubber, it will sort of lift over each of the metal fret things, which would be great. And it could be driven and pulled by some of this wonderful stuff, which I've had sitting around for ages. Toothed rubber drive belt stuff. And they use it on loads and loads of CNC machines, as I'll show you in a minute. And I've even got a packet of these, the toothed pulleys, and something along the lines, this is of the wrong pitch, but you can get lots of different types of pulleys, obviously tooth pulleys, so it could drive it really nice like that. Join the ends on some sort of saddle, cradle, whatever here, and have some tensioner there. That's the usual way they do it. And then that could drive that backwards and forwards really quickly. Have it narrow, have 4 of them in line. So that's my current thinking. It's how my lovely 3D printer works. Back here, and apologies for the darkness, but it's stuck in the corner, there's a stepper motor there, one of those NEMA ones, more powerful and no gears. And then that drives one of those rubber belts. You just see it down there. It goes round the end, tensioner, and then back to the cradle bit that can go across. It's got 3 wheels that run in indented surfaces. So something like that, but without a print nozzle on it, just a little bung, something to push on the strings, and a limit switch as well. Very similar to that, in fact. So, oh, it's hot in here. Thanks very much for watching. Most kind, if you still are. Please, I'm flagging a bit with this project. I need some encouragement and enthusiasm. Basically, I need something to make some sounds fairly quickly to keep me motivated. Let me know what you think. Should I carry on with the ukulele? Beautiful. Should I return to the flute? Or should I look at possibly something like the accordion? Or indeed, should I bite the bullet and just carry on trying to figure out, well, making lots and lots of these? Don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments, as long as it's polite. Equally, if you'd rather I retired to the behind the camera again, do let me know. If it's all a little bit too much. Please remember to subscribe and like if you do like this sort of thing. Hope to see you soon. Thanks very much again.